Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Osmosis Jones from 2001. And this is a winner of the Patreon movie review vote. If you would like for me to review a movie of your choice, then click on the link below and pledge, and maybe I'll be reviewing your movie next month. And this winner was selected by Jordan Bouchard. Osmosis Jones is a animation live-action hybrid, except unlike Looney Tunes Back in Action or Who Framed Roger Rabbit or Space Jam or whichever, isn't really, I don't even want to call it a hybrid almost, because it's like sort of two different plot lines going on. I guess in sort of the same place, you see the guy who's played by Bill Murray, who has an illness inside him, and you see what's going on inside him, with one of the cops. There's a white blood cell called Osmosis or Ozzy, and as Frank has gotten sick and taken a pill, Ozzy and Drix, who's the cold pill or whatever, are going to kind of stop this virus. So you see him getting sick and how he's generally sort of disgusting, and he's going to do all these things, and then inside him you see this sort of buddy cop thing of them trying to fight the virus. And so they don't really cross over. I mean, they are directly connected and they're going on at the same time. But supposedly when the animation at least started production, they hadn't actually gotten live action directors or gotten a star in the live action part to kind of carry the movie, the whole idea of it. Now, this was an ambitious idea by Warner Brothers Animation to combine the two. I don't know if I think part of it works, but I think the other part of it kind of gets into, they didn't really know how to market it, and the whole idea of like having Tom Sitow and I think it's Piet Krone do the animation stuff, and Tom Sitow is like an animation legend. I've heard his name for a very long time, and that's a majority of the film, but the live action parts are by Peter and Bobby Farrelly, or the Farrelly brothers, who were much bigger at the time, and they actually got the kind of director's credit per their contract. Actually, they got the director's credit, not the people who made more of the movie. Now, actually, at the time, remember, since I was in the movies when this came out, I fully remember people saying, oh, and the Farrelly brothers are working on an animated film, which I guess is not technically incorrect. And I get marketing wise, you'd want this to be a Farrelly brothers movie. Those movies were making a lot of money. I think Me, Myself, and Irene coming around that time. There's Something About Mary was a huge hit, so it made sense. This was sort of the era of gross out comedy, so like you'd want like the, I guess, considered best directors of that to direct your live action part. I get uncomfortable about, I understand for marketing reasons why it's Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas, because no one knew who Henry Selick was. You weren't going to get that many people to see it. But at the same time, it's a little disrespectful and not accurate. It's Tim Burton and Henry Selick's Nightmare Before Christmas. It's Osmosis Jones, directed by these four people, not just by the Farrellys, who seemingly just sort of matched up to other people's hard work in the end. And I think they do get it to work within their own style and Tom Sitow's own style, particularly that they make Bill Murray, who plays Frank, where all this stuff is going inside, incredibly like gross. He's like a really disgusting protagonist, like to a pretty crazy degree. Like there's sometimes, I mean, how he gets sick, like I don't know if I'm like the cleanest person in the world, but like he's like eating first off a hard-boiled egg, which is gross, and then he like drops it, and then a monkey puts it in his mouth, and then he gets it away from the monkey and still eats it. Like the dropping it was gross. And it's like you're a monkey. Like obviously you're gonna get a bad disease. I don't know. I kind of like, I'm not sure if the Farrelly brothers were having too much fun with this, or like sort of playing off it, or they're just generally like, what are gross ideas? I don't know. Like I could never decide the Farrelly brothers thing. Like there's a part with the zit that's epically disgusting. And like, I was like, well, zits don't suddenly just like pop like that. It just like suddenly, it's very gross and stuff because they're gross out, but it's like most zits, like, you know, you pop them yourself and stuff. So but I did like inside like Ozzy and Drix, like that felt a lot more compelling with Lawrence Fishburne as this sort of like horrible disease, basically. Like there's never a point where they're like, yeah, and if this spreads, like it'll like bring about the Black Plague or something. It's just, it is known as a bad disease. But it's also like the movie heavily implies that both Frank, because he's a single father, that his wife and him were just like truly just gross ass people, and like his wife's dead in a seemingly very preventable way, And that's a weird way to take this movie. I think it's like the body rend is the absolute most disgusting thing humanly imaginable. And Bill Murray doesn't really get to do his charm as much, although it's a unique idea and stuff. But I think like what's going on inside, because you have puns and cool voice actors, you have like William Shatner as the mayor of Frank, governor of Frank. You had Chris Rock as Osmosis. You had David Hyde Pierce as Drix. You have like a constant group. I mean, it is crazy to have a movie with Bill Murray and Chris Rock, and you'd hope it would be better. I think that part sort of works as a general action adventure. I do think it's interesting Warner Brothers animation, and they made this before Looney Tunes Back in Action, which would be a much better animation live action hybrid, would be willing to spend a ton of money on something like this. It seems like a very ambitious, interesting project. I don't think it ultimately is, and I think it's the live action part, which stinks because that's how I know about it. I think most people knew about it was because of the live action part, and I feel like it does not live up to what the animation has for it. I don't know if Tom Sitow or like the other people who worked on it got to actually be on set for the live action parts or like help with that or help develop it, or it was like it felt almost like two different styles at once. It didn't feel like Richard Williams and Robert Zemeckis. It just feels like two different filmmaking and animation styles like butting heads constantly, and to sort of like make out to be a story somehow, which is great, and it shows both filmmakers' willingness to work with one another. But I don't think it ultimately made that memorable of a movie. It's more memorable because of the fact it exists, but it's not memorable sort of on its own. I mean, it's been like all these years, so I still haven't seen it. I don't hear it referenced that much. I didn't actually know there was an animated show till more recently because I wasn't watching Saturday mornings at that point. I sort of get the buddy cop thing, and I think Zootopia would end up doing that better, but I do like that this tries to be a little more adult. I wouldn't even say this is a full PG-13. It's just like, maybe you're 12 and you can watch this or something, but it almost feels like just sort of like an average sort of cartoon and stuff like that. It's a little above that, but I think Tom Sitow is doing a lot of the heavy lifting to make this movie work, and you almost kind of wonder like, well, why didn't they just do the animated part and like reduce the live action segments, which I sort of think they should have. I don't fully understand what the point of them was, other than to be like, oh, we need an outside thing. And it felt a little silly. Like it just didn't, I don't know, maybe if those scenes had been better written, it felt like sort of like they thought they were just going to get a slam dunk other hit or something, and they didn't really think that much about it. It feels like an offhanded thing where it feels like what's going on within Frank feels like a full sort of movie. So it's just like the expertise and care level between the two is just not there, unfortunately. A film like this should be more than just general uniqueness, and it just never becomes more than that. And I think Warner Brothers Animation, you have things like The Iron Giant and Looney Tunes Back in Action. This is sandwiched between those two, and those two show more of what they could do and like let directors go. I think the others like feel very much director's visions, whereas this feels like, it was in development hell for a while, but it feels like it was studio sort of noted into its own existence. I sort of wish it maybe spent some more time. The animation hybrid sort of had worked, and I wish they'd gotten somebody like, they didn't need to be so insanely gross. Like it just felt like it pushed it in such an aggressive way. I remember this era, and like every comedy was doing that, and it just got so old, and this reminded me how sick I was of that stupid bullshit. But if you were to watch a cut of both the animated thing, I think that would have been a little more interesting, but even that felt like a little cliched, like they're trying to fight the villain, they're trying to do this and stuff like that. So I would not say, I think like the idea of this and this being an animation live action hybrid sounds really cool, but until you watch it and have to deal with like its actual story and execution, it feels a little less special. Probably why like I never hear about this movie, unfortunately, anymore. I do think it has some pretty cool action set pieces, and particularly everything as Frank Body really sings and comes alive. I don't think it overall as a whole piece really ultimately works. I sort of wish it had, and I think when you're thinking about it, you wish it had, but it really doesn't. And I think it shows like notes and like egotism with the contracts, with them getting the sole director's credit and stuff like that. That kind of nonsense you can kind of reeks throughout the entire movie. You kind of can't wash that off. That smell is just there. You can tell like a general disrespect of them sort of doing anything, which makes you wonder why they're even bothering making this if they're not going to love it any, because you'd expect something so interesting and different to be embraced a little bit more by the studio. And instead they sort of like, felt like noted it within an inch of its life, particularly the live action parts, but it really just doesn't come alive and sing the way you'd probably want something to with such a unique voice like Osmosis Jones. Instead, it feels like, a major animation studio's giant folly that you sort of wish could have been more, and feels like it could have been more, and break out from that. But unfortunately, it's just sort of like a studio mess of styles that worked well enough that nobody questioned at the time, but not enough people are really watching since. So if you have seen Osmosis Jones and would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to. And if you would like for me to review a movie of your choice, then click on the link below and pledge, and maybe I'll be reviewing your movie next month. Thank you very much for watching. Yeah, this film also features that Kid Rock song about underage girls that I had to hear a lot when Cosmodor was canceled and stuff. That was okay. At the time, by the way, Kid Rock was not really still popular. It was sort of very much waning. And, I don't remember actually hearing that song at the time. I hear it more now when that meme when Cosmodor got canceled and stuff. So, anyway.